G'day, my name's John. I'd like to welcome you to the first video that I'm going to post on this blog. Tonight I'm going to install a T.C.S decoder into a Life-like G.P 60. There it is there, the instructions. I've already done 2 installs, and hopefully what I've learned off those I can pass on this third one after 2 pretty successful goes, but I'm not quite happy with them. Ably assisted by my whippet. Oh, Charlotte! Hello! Wave. Put me down, John. Right, sit back, enjoy it, and hopefully a novice like myself can pass on some tips. And to anyone out there, don't worry too much about it. It's quite straightforward once you get it in front of you. Okay, first off, I've disassembled the locomotive as per the instructions, and I've grinded out the frames according to the instructions on T.C.S's website specific for this model. Basically it's along the bottom and top edges, and also in the motor mounts on either end. Just file them back slightly. It's just there to gain a bit of clearance for the contacts on the motor. For once you wire them on there, they will be needs just a little bit of room. Another important point to take note of is the fact that to ensure that you wire the motor correctly, you must distinguish between the top and the bottom of the motor. After closely examining it and marking it with a felt tip pen which rubs off, I discovered that on the bottom of the motor is a round hole in the bottom of the casing. As you can see, that is the bottom of the motor. Okay, so the orange wire is soldered to the bottom contact. To trim off the contact tabs on the motor, I simply used a pair of sharp micro scissors to snip them off. They're not too tough. Just snip them off so you've got enough room to solder a probably 3mm piece of contact wire from the decoder onto them. Also, not mentioned on the instructions, you can also file a small groove down the left hand side of the motor here as a bit of a guide for the orange wire going to the bottom of the motor to help it clear the outside shell. It doesn't have to be too deep, 1 millimeter at the most. You won't damage the casing of the motor at all. Okay, here it is, the decoder itself. The section with the wires is the front section. The section with the 3 contact pads on it, this one here, that's for the rear of the locomotive. Don't be too concerned, you've pulled the lights out of the original loco. It does have super bright LEDs at the front of each decoder, so just be careful when you're placing it not to damage those. Okay, to measure the length of the grey wire, I've been saying the orange wire, the grey wire to go to the bottom of the motor, I simply fitted the motor inside the frame, placed the decoder in half the socket, stretched the grey wire down, ran it down around the top of the motor. Don't worry, there's plenty of room. And I've brought it down through. Once you get it down there, you should be able to get an approximate length of how much you need. Don't worry if you're a bit too long, because you can always pull the wire back, stretch it out, pin it down with a bit of electrical tape. Cut it too short, you're in a lot of trouble. Okay, I've tinned the wire on the end of the decoder after stripping a small 3-4mm section off the wire. I'm also going to tin the contact on the motor. Don't do it too long, just a touch. Let it get on there and then take it off, otherwise you will melt the plastic. Got flux on there, but no solder yet. That's it. Okay, now it's time to attach the first wire to the bottom of the motor. Tin to both the wires. Pretty easy to connect them. Just place your wire on the contact, touch it with the iron, job's done. Okay, as you can see here, I've attached the grey wire to the bottom of the frame. It's sitting snugly in its groove that I've filed into the plastic motor casing, and I've put the decoder back in there so I can determine the length of the orange wire which is soldered to the top of the motor on this side. Don't worry about too much about a bit of exposed wire there. I'm going to cover it up with a bit of good old electrical tape when it's all ready to be reassembled. Okay, here's a view from the other side. It shows you here where the grey wire goes down through the split in the frame, around the top, plenty of room, down to the bottom of the motor contact, which is on this side. As you can see, grinding away the excess metal there has cleared the surface of the contact. Again, I'm going to cover the contact and the soldered wire motor, cover that with a bit of electrical tape. So basically this red one, the orange one here, has just got to come down through the frame and contact with the motor there. I'll just go through this one. The other one was a bit of fiddly work, but this is a bit better. So you just take the orange wire, don't pull it too tight, stretch it down, run it along the length of the contact like that, determine where you want it, and just snip it. Make sure you've got a bit of wiggle room, that way you can get the decoder in and out of the frame as you work on it. So there we go, snip, that's it. Just an important point to remember when you do have a soldering iron, make sure you keep it clear of the wires and the decoder itself, because just a little touch can do a lot of damage. Right, so we've got our solder, put a bit of flux on it. As I said before, it's important that you tin the wire before you try and attach it, so just a bit of momentary contact. Oh, stuck. That's it, wire's tinned, no damage to the insulation, it's all good. Same with the contact on the motor. Just a brief little touch. Careful, you don't want to melt the plastic. Never know what might happen. Give it a bit of a touch. Bit too much, but that's okay. No damage done. Okay, probably a little bit too much solder on that contact, but there's no point buggerising around with it. At this stage, you want to keep your fingers out of the way so you can see what you're doing. So I like to use a pair of little tweezers to place that wire so I can hold it. As you can see, I've got the motor sitting in the frame. There's no reason to take it out and out. It's just a lot of unnecessary moving, so just leave it there and take your wire. That's if you're not going blind. Place it near your contact. Little touch. The two are now one.